Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, the first point I wanted to make, Dr. Atif has already made, which is the problem with this question, because it's about the role of Imams and Imams. If you take the majority view with regards to, the predominant role of the Imam as a leader as a leader of prayer in the masjid, then the question itself excludes women. So I think we have to address that. So I'm going to assume that we're talking about the role of faith leaders, which is a term I prefer, and I agree with Dr. Alison Scott Bowman and Dr. Muqaddam's report, where they actually highlight this problem and the lack of gender neutrality in some of the terminology used. So I'd like to echo that. So the second point is that if indeed we mean by Imam faith leaders, then for me the future is one in which our best talent chooses faith leadership and faith leadership training. Despite, not because the problems have been solved, despite the problems, in spite of the problems, in spite of the sacrifices that are required to be made, and in spite of all of the difficulties, because they are our best talent. Because they're the best, right? So if the best of us don't stand up and face the storm, right? And if the best of us aren't captaining the ship into the storm, then we're never going to make it through, right? And because we don't want to work with mosque committees, and because the pay isn't good enough, and because of this, that, and the other. In my view, that's the very definition of a lack of leadership. So I think this is something that, and people who are, if you're thinking about these issues, you have to stand up and be counted, all right? Otherwise, really get off the table. Let somebody who has more courage talk, all right? That's one thing. But having said that, we have to fund them. Isn't it always that's the case, right? Some people push on despite the problems. Other people try to alleviate the problems, and this has to happen. This balance has to be there. The other thing that I see is that women have a sufficient, and I'm going to use the word sufficient very deliberately, because I'm referring to sufficiency from the point of view of kifaya. From the point of view, it's a juristic term from the point of view of the fard kifaya, because I believe that women having a stake, pretty much exactly as Sister Shuruq and Sister Miriam have put it, in terms of the importance, in terms of them being involved from right from the top, both in terms of shaping the vision, but also in delivering the vision, that stake has to be there. And although equality is something that isn't being achieved in the mainstream, and is probably a pipe dream in my view, when it comes to a kind of visible equality of like exactly the same number of men and women kind of in this room. Something like that isn't going to be achieved. But we do have something called kifaya in the Islamic system, which is that until we have sufficiency in women's leadership that results in the kind of balance that is required to solve some of the problems that we're facing, and to deal with some of the imbalance due to patriarchy and so on, then until that sufficiency is achieved, and the thing about that term, of course, is that juristically it means that without the sufficiency, everybody is sinful, including the men, right? So that's the whole idea of fard kifaya, and it is a fard kifaya, and I think it needs to be looked at in those terms, because sometimes, without thinking of things in terms of fard and halal and haram, Muslims don't know how to act, right? Okay. So, 1 minute? Okay, almost. I'm trying to read my own handwriting, believe it or not. Okay, and I wanted to say that women, the female, I really would like to see female scholars, and not knowledge kind of in terms, with either the fiqh lens on or a particular lens, just knowledge generally, the kind of knowledge that is pursued because one is pursuing a specialism or is pushing for ijtihad and so on and so forth, results in women having an authoritative voice that then results in them resolving the problem of text and context for issues that relate to them, so that we can overcome the problem this constant kind of gripe about men having interpreted, men calling the shots when it comes to interpretation. Then there is the community, and the community is a big part of the question of leadership and the question of faith leadership and so on. And I refer to the community as an ecosystem. The analogy is based on the fact that every part of an ecosystem is connected to the other. That is the idea. And therefore, kind of, the Imams can't just keep complaining about the community can't just complain about the Imams. We're all kind of interconnected, like an ecosystem. So as the community, I'd like to see that the community is enabling and empowering faith leaders to be involved at the masjid, men and women. And by that, I'm not talking about management. Look, so Sister Miriam, I think, asked the question about who's involved in as an imam, etc., etc. So I'm going to change the question and ask, who is a serving imam in a masjid? So we have quite a few faith leaders here. How many of you faith leaders are serving imams in a masjid? See, not one, right? Not one. Some of us have been in the past. I have been, Mufti Abdul Rahman has been. But we're not, because we don't like it, right? The community needs to find a way of enabling the people who they really want, who they moan about, right? Well, find out why they don't want to do it and resolve those issues. And finally, I'm done? Okay. All right, so I will be done.
Thank you.
So you haven't been as strict as you could be, by the way. You need to be more strict. All right? But not with me.